Well, we're back again, folks. 200 Cops, and it's episode. What are we up to? 4
Yeah,
of
part
of
4.
what we'll probably end up calling the Zac Rolfe series. But it's episode 4 this week, and we're at a bit of a critical point. We've sort of discussed the obviously the build up to it, the incident itself, the post being charged, and the processes that go through there, and just the sheer bloody torture of being in no man's land waiting for a court date. So, how are you, mate? What's going on?
Yeah, good, mate. Well, mate, my life's been normal as always, but like I always say, especially when we got Zach here, we just, we want to hear from him. Like some of the stuff we've gone through so far, there's so much more to talk about. But I think today we're just going to go into basically the Supreme Court trial, or so start off leading up to that. And Zach, how are you, mate?
Yeah, good. Thanks, boys. How you guys on? All
Good,
good?
Yeah.
mate. Good.
That's good.
So Zach, it's obviously last time we spoke about the lead up. So, in the first couple of episodes, we talked about talked about the actual incident itself, and then I think the incident would be of interest to people outside the police force, but the process afterwards is really what the police would be interested in because, there but for the grace of God go them. So that's where it's really unique to be able to talk to you about that real humanisation of what happens when someone's charged with this sort of stuff for doing their job, really. So, obviously last time we were up to the point where we'd spoken about the committal hearing, so through the local court where you've been committed to appear in the Supreme Court, and you'd mentioned there'd been some speed bumps leading up to that. So, mate, I think we'll hand over to you, and if you just want to take it from there.
Yeah, for sure. So, basically we talked about the committal process and getting to the point where the next real step is getting a trial date. And before you're actually there to start your trial, there's a number of, there's lots of, well, for me especially, there's a lot of pre-court date or pre-trial dates to go through a number of administration points preparing for the trial, where the judge would determine, I guess, the left and right of arc of the case, what expert evidence is going to be allowed and how it's going to be run. So we're going through those over the year and a half, nearly, after the committal, because the committal I think was in September 2020, and then we didn't eventually get to trial until February or March of 22.
Oh, shit.
But we're going through court a number of times. There was the fight that I had that we mentioned last time, the fight with the Commissioner of Police to get the coronial report released to us, or the draft report released to us. So that took a while, going back and forth between court. We ended up winning that, and the judge involved in that, who was going to be the trial court judge, he mentioned at the end of that little case or little side fight, that if that report hadn't been disclosed to us, or he said something along the lines of, there's issues of that, like if a document like this hadn't been disclosed, this could result in an innocent man going to jail. So there's already a number of issues of disclosure in those side court matters. But as we get closer and closer, the judge himself actually sent off some queries to the High Court about the legal defences I have. Because in summary, the case was this from the NT Police and the DPP. Shot 1, justified. Shots 2 and 3 were murder. So then we're looking at my legal defences. And I, like everybody else, have the defence of self-defence. Then as a police officer, I have another defence. It's basically called the law enforcement officer defence, where obviously self-defence, we all know you can use force that is reasonable to defend yourself or others, up to and including lethal if required. The law enforcement officer defence was basically like, if I'm acting in my duty and doing so reasonably, I'm not guilty. And the last and the greatest, I guess the broadest defence I have was the good faith defence, which all police officers in Australia have. The good faith defence basically says, am I acting in my duty in good faith? Like, do I mean well, basically? And I guess reasonableness kind of leaves the equation. But do I mean well and I'm acting in my duty? If so, I'm not guilty of an offence. So there were three defences that I had to the charge of murder, which was attached with it manslaughter. So the judge sends off queries to the I guess the Supreme Court board or the full court of the Supreme Court, determining if all three defences apply for me in the case, and so that's just going on in the background. The five Supreme Court judges of the Supreme Court, of the five judges of the full court, they all agreed, so 5-0, that I had all three defences, including the good faith defence. Now, the police appealed that decision because they were trying to remove the good faith defence from me. But this now becomes a legislative argument. This is actually very interesting to probably the police audience. So this now, when you appeal to the High Court of Australia, this is a legislative appeal. So it's no longer directly associated with like the Zac Rolfe being charged with murder. This legislation affects all cops, not only in the NT, but all over Australia. So that's also a long appeal process. So that's now been pushed aside. That's going on in the background as we're still getting to trial. We end up getting to Darwin in August 2021. The trial had been delayed, or some pre-stuff had been delayed because of quarantine for COVID at this point in time. But me and my legal team, we went to Darwin. We ended up quarantining for it was only like half a week that you had to quarantine, 4 days or something like that in a hotel. We went up there to prepare for the case, but the prosecution team from Sydney refused to do that. So we were trying to get them to have to come up here so we could start the trial. The prosecution team refused. That delayed it some more. We finally get it all sorted, and 6 days before the trial was supposed to start, I get laid with a number of internal charges from PSC. So we finally got it to Darwin just before August, preparing for like the biggest thing that I've gone through, potentially 25 years on the line. And PSC lay not just internal investigations, not 79s, but they actually laid charges against me for a number of matters 6 days before the trial was supposed to start. So we know that PSC was meeting with the criminal team, the criminal investigation team, prior to that. So I would assume that they're doing it together. And the only reason I can imagine that they would do that was to add more pressure to me prior to the trial beginning. Because what does it matter if I've got some internal discipline matters if you give it to me, like if you let me know on that date or after the murder trial finishes. So they ended up laying that on me 6 days before the trial starts, which was pretty intense, but it was kind of just like more pressure that they were putting on me. And then the morning of the trial was supposed to start. Up to this point, this High Court thing had been going on in the background. We'd had a number of, directions hearings with that. And the prosecutor from Sydney for the DPP, he'd end up having, when he was giving his evidence or giving his statement to the High Court, he ended up saying, hey, if you don't accept our appeal quickly, there's basically no point in this trial going on. Because without it, there's basically zero prospect of prosecution. And he says that on the record at the High Court. And the High Court was like, whoa, this can't be about an individual case. This appeal is for the legislation for all of Australia. The police and they kind of got around it, but he admitted that at this point in time, if I had the good faith defence, there's basically no prospect of conviction. And the good faith defence had been there the entire time that this case was going through in the investigation. Not only that, five full court judges or 5 Supreme Court judges all agreed that good faith defence was in. The police's argument became this at the High Court. Actually, their argument matters probably later, because on the day that the trial was supposed to start in August 2021, me and my family are up in Darwin. A couple of my mates have come up as well. We're literally buttoned up in our shirts and stuff, dressed up, ready to go, ready to walk from the hotel in Darwin City down to the courtroom. Half an hour before, at 9:30 a.m, I get a call on my mobile. The High Court has accepted the appeal and the trial is going to get delayed So on the morning of the trial, it gets delayed again indefinitely because the high court's going to accept the appeal and hear the appeal first. So that was a wild week. Obviously, prepping for it, traveling up to Darwin, quarantining again, getting those PSC internal charges. Because as we know, like there's some of them, like an internal investigation can be stressful enough because it goes for so long. You don't know what's going on, all that kind of stuff. But to have those charges laid in that week was just petty. But not only petty, malicious. Because as we know, there's a lot of chat from the police force, from the bosses, talking about mental health, talking about looking after your members. But then they go and do that kind of stuff. And it's not just me that they're using these tactics with. This is just on a higher level, but everyone's got different levels of it, like stress endurance, I guess. So this is why so many police are being affected. One of the reasons why negatively, because the organization hasn't changed in their tactics or attitude at the top level from this time. It's the same people still there. Yes, some people have been forced to leave and stuff like that, but it's the sheep that followed the leader kind of that have taken over the leading. But yeah, so that was a hectic week. I then go back to Canberra and start dealing with this High Court issue, which I'm just on the sideline for that, just listening into that. This is where the police argument comes in. So the police argument was this. They were saying that this was just in regard to the good faith defence, in regard to my case specifically, that the good faith defence was there for the first shot because they believed they could say during the first shot I was trying to arrest Kumanjai Walker. But then they were saying for the second and third shot, I was then trying to protect my partner's life. So it should not be there because arresting someone is part of a core function of a police officer, but protecting my own partner's life is not part of a core function. You're on mute, brother.
Protect life and property. Number one is protect life and property.
Yeah.
So they were arguing that it wasn't a function. It's either functional or core function, but they were saying that to affect the arrest, good faith could be used. To protect my partner's life, good faith could not be used. So the trial gets delayed, we go to the High Court. The High Court basically just agree with the Supreme Court judges, but in a different wording. For all this stress for nothing. So they say, well, hey, how about what if you could do two things at once? What if you could try to arrest while protecting life? And then they got to the point, and it was misreported that we'd lost the good faith defence. But it's just because it got so legal, it got so deep into legal jargon that they say, hey, what if in the second and third shot we say that Rolfe was trying to effect the arrest, but he was also trying to prevent an offence by protecting his partner's life because Walker would have been stabbing Ebel. It's an offence to stab people, especially cops. So by protecting his life is preventing an offence. So after all that, it just got legal jargon. It all got muddled for the reporters. So muddled that even the court reporters got it wrong. But basically, we got through High Court. Good faith defence is still there. The police lose that. And I think everyone has to keep in mind that the NT police and the NT DPP tried to take that away from police across Australia in order to try and assist in stitching me up. They lose that. We then finally get a date to get up to Darwin to actually begin the trial. And ready to go. We get up to Darwin in, I think, February 2022. Again, the boys and the family get up there. The legal team, we're all prepped and ready to go. And that's when it was booked in for 5 weeks. 5 weeks. All the witnesses were prosecution witnesses. But then there was myself and again the AFP expert, the current AFP use of force expert, wasn't allowed to give evidence supporting me in the trial. So we used a retired. Did we talk about that last time?
I think in the episode you might have mentioned that where
Yeah, it was part of the prep. We
yeah,
reached out to the AFP for their, and went up the chain of command and got cleared to speak with and share evidence with the AFP current use of force expert, which we did, and he was in agreement that it was a justified shoot and was willing to give evidence for that. So when we requested his, I guess, leave to write the report and to give evidence, that's when Kershaw stepped in and sent us the letter basically saying, "No, conflict of interest." But then we went and found a retired use of force expert from AFP who was only recently retired. So the only witness on our list, I guess, was him. The rest of the witnesses were prosecution witnesses. In the lead up again in the early weeks leading up to the trial, the DPP and the police applied for, I think, 4 or 5 of the police witnesses to be treated as hostile witnesses. So that means that they can be cross-examined by prosecution rather than just led through their evidence. And the reason for that application was that they said these police were just not cooperating. We looked into that a bit further, found out that the 4 or 5 officers 100% had been cooperating. In some instances, they'd been requested, they'd been emailed and by the detectives, asked times that they'd be available to be proofed. They'd all responded, all willing to be proofed, but the detectives had not got back to them. So it seemed that the detectives were trying to manipulate a situation to show that these guys were not cooperating. Once we subpoenaed all the communications and the emails, that got denied. So those all witnesses, like none of them were hostile. So yeah, then we get to court. And yeah, it was good to, again, it was wild, but it was good to start the process because we'd been trying to get there for so long. For over 2 years, we've been trying to get that process started. And we were comfortable with the evidence that there really wasn't that much against me. There was nothing against me. The American, the guy that they call the use of force expert, he'd been kicked out of the case already in the pre-court decisions. So it was only the NT use of force training apparent expert. That was the only guy against me, really. And against him, to counter him, we had the AFP use of force expert that actually wrote a large majority of the PAM of the use of force for Australia. And we get to court. It was a weird situation. So walking to court through Darwin each morning, even though it was only like a K walk or whatever, but it was just weird. Obviously, there's not much going on. People knew who we were, knew who I was, and it was pretty polarized. You either were on side or you weren't on side. You walk into the courtroom every morning, and the regular folk go through security one way. You go with them, and then you go get taken away to the cells area to get pat down by the security. It's just their process. And then you walk in. Because of COVID, the jury were actually split on either side of the court. So they were sitting in the dock area where I would usually sit as the defendant. But also I was actually sitting in the crowd. So I was sitting in the crowd just behind my legal team for the entire 5 weeks. We did the jury selection. Obviously, again, it's been reported that it was an all-white jury. It wasn't. There was an Indigenous woman on the jury. There was women, people of other races. But that's just reporting for you. They don't always care about the truth, which we know. And then, into the trial. And for the most part, those 5 weeks were probably exceptionally boring because it was just strange. It was such a large case, so many witnesses. But every day we were sitting there thinking, where is the evidence against me? All the 3 other members of IRT, the dog handler, all their evidence, and even some of the local police, bar the Sarge out there, all the evidence supported my version of events. The medical evidence, because as we know, our training is to fire until the threat's neutralized or incapacitated. The medical evidence that the police had was that the first shot medically was not incapacitating. The first shot got stuck in Walker's psoas muscle. It was not incapacitating anyway, and definitely not incapacitating to his right arm. So that's the medical evidence in regard to the first shot. The other witnesses that actually were there all supported my version of events, that the first shot wasn't incapacitating, that Walker was still fighting after the first shot and even after the third shot. So it was strange that every day that we were just sitting there waiting for the evidence to get it to come against me. But in saying that, the reporting from the media every day was extremely negative. So if you were to read the news every day about the trial, by the end of the trial, you would have thought that I was going to jail. So I guess that was it. So nothing really happens for the majority of the 5 weeks. We're just going through the motions of talking to each witness, talking about various events, going over and over the same things. It's just mainly like everything. It's mainly boring. But towards the end of it, certain things come out that, again, don't shine a good light on the NT police. So the negative evidence against me ends up being the NT use of force trainer, who basically got shredded. He obviously got to walk through his evidence by the prosecutor. So that's a bad day for us because he's just getting walked through his statement. He then gets cross-examined by my lawyer and shreds him. Like my lawyer shreds him. And then in his own re-examination where the prosecutor tries to save him, he ends up getting flustered and he kind of just shoots himself in the foot again in a strange way. So that was a little bit of a bad day there. Obviously, it's going to be a bad day if there's a statement just purely aimed negative about me. Again, his statement, we've already gone through it. The evidence that he put forward was the first shot potentially justified, second and third not justified. That's the statement that the Scott Pollock had already gone through and basically already torn apart for basically being biased, incompetent, wrong about a number of things. Not only that, not having access to the full evidence. Then there comes the pathologist, a woman from Darwin who did the autopsy. So she gave evidence. This is the only other poor part of evidence, I guess, against me. She gave evidence that the pair of scissors used by Walker weren't lethal and couldn't have been lethal. And this is where we obviously found that she'd emailed the detectives involved and was asked her opinion on that. And she initially said, hey, I shouldn't give an opinion on that. I did the autopsy on Walker and there could be a perception of bias. They push a bit further and they're like, all right, we'll use your opinion anyway. And she gives her the opinion basically based off looking at it, the pair of scissors, and watching the body-worn footage from the angles that Walker was at. She didn't believe that the scissors had any ability to be lethal. We find out through cross-examination and proofing of the police own witnesses. So they had they definitely had a forensics expert from the AFP, and they had 2 other medical experts, all of whom the detectives had asked their opinion on the lethality of the scissors. Now, all 3 of them, prior to them going to the pathologist, had given the police opinion, 2 in writing, of how lethal these scissors were, especially around the area that they were being used against myself and Ebel. So with disclosure, we'd already gone how the previous judge, and the pre-trial stuff had gone for so long that the first judge retired. So now we had a new judge. And the first judge had already made mention about how important disclosure is. And the NT police and the prosecution have to disclose all evidence, whether it's in favour or not in favour of the charge. And now we're finding more issues of non-disclosure.
Can I just throw in there, mate? The fact that was even a conversation is offensive.
Yeah.
Like, you must disclose all evidence. I'm sorry. That is the most basic level of policing there is. You disclose all inculpatory and exculpatory evidence. Yeah. It's just, it doesn't need to be explained to a police force. It just bamboozles me. But anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt.
100%.
I needed to jump on that. I'll leave you be. Sorry.
No, I'm glad you did because, again, we know it's such a big deal that this issue arose, but other people may not. So I'm glad you did because we found these out by luck. So who knows what else hasn't been disclosed? And we also know from Pollock's report that this was the most biased investigation he ever witnessed. So we will never know, because it's never been properly investigated, what ways it was pushed, what people were, I guess, manipulated to say, to do, or what was left out. These things we came on by chance during the trial. So these three guys, one was an AFP textiles expert, and he ends up coming out giving evidence, being like, yeah, correct. The closest thing we have to human flesh is a pork shoulder. So you put the pork shoulder under exactly what I was wearing, police shirt and an undershirt. And he goes, with medium force, I held the scissors as Walker was holding them. Medium force only, stabbed the pork shoulder through the shirt, easy 2-3 inches in, easy. So anywhere along my collarbone or my neck, easily lethal, like without a doubt. And again, I got lucky. The stab where I got stabbed properly in the shoulder, got lucky because it hit bone, so there's no issue. So it doesn't. It's not a. It is just a minor wound. But if it was in the flesh, those scissors are going deep. The other two witnesses, expert evidence or expert witnesses, they gave evidence as well. But what we established occurred was the detectives had gone from those, like one of them, to the next one, to the next one, finding the opinions that they don't like, that don't match their narrative, until they went to the fourth one, the woman, and they found the opinion that suited their narrative. Because again, their mission for Operation Charwell was to create a file in support of the charges against me. So they're following their bias mission to find evidence in support of. They found evidence that doesn't support them, non-disclosed it, found evidence, and kept going until they found evidence that did support them. So who knows how many times that occurred. We know that happened with the American expert, the use of force guy that they wanted to use initially. We now know that's happened with the pathologist who they used to give evidence of the lethality of the scissors. So what else have they done? What else haven't they disclosed? And this same file, this is what, again, later down the track, people don't understand. This file of evidence, the same criminal file, is the package that the NT police then pass on to the coroner. So despite all these issues, the coroner happily uses this file. So we find all this out. After nearly, 4.5 weeks of the police and the prosecution's evidence, we get to the point where their evidence is over, and now it's our turn. And I remember on that day, my lawyer and I had a really good legal team, and we'd had a number of chats. And I think at some points along the way, my lawyer may have been in a way like testing me, not in so far as what I knew, but how I reacted to certain, catalysts. And by the time we got to this point in the trial, he was very comfortable with like who I was as a person, and how I would react, because as we know, a lot of the court it's nearly theatre for the jury. So the prosecutor and the defense lawyer, they're nearly performing for the jury. So part of that performance is they're going to try and make you look like a piece of shit. That's one of the goals sometimes, and that's what the prosecutor was going to do to me if I gave evidence. And there's also a general rule, a rule of thumb, that if you're in a trial like this and you're winning the case, you wouldn't give evidence, because you're only giving yourself a risk of losing, of stitching yourself up. But we get to the end of the prosecution evidence, and my lawyer looked over to me and he just kind of like gave me a question, like, did I want to go up? I was like, yeah. I gave him a nod back, and that's where we decided that I'd give evidence. So we'd had a chat before, and we're talking about how like we didn't want to just win the case. I wanted to clear myself, and if I never gave evidence, you'd never be truly cleared. Didn't seem to matter anymore at the end of the day anyway, but that's where we're at then. So the case was over, or the prosecution case was done, and then me and my lawyer decided that I would give evidence. So I get called up to give evidence, and the reporters at that point kind of lost their minds, because even though the reporters had been reporting this whole time negatively about the case, they also knew that rule of thumb, that if you win in the case, you generally don't give evidence. So no one thought I was going to give evidence. So I get up to give evidence, sit in the box in the courtroom, just like, everyone in Darwin starts, all the journos start texting each other and all that. And then, the courtroom's full. And basically I was in the box for 3 days. About half that time was my lawyer leading me through the evidence that I'd given him, the statement and stuff that I'd given my legal team. And then, cross-examined by Phil Strickland, the prosecutor for the DPP, for about a day and a half. The internet was just wigging out. So cross-examined by him, and again, there wasn't much. He can only be as good. Like, you nearly, in a way, you feel bad for him, because he can only go as good as the team he has for him, and the experts that he is utilizing as well. And some of the evidence that he'd been given by the use of force training expert was just so blatantly wrong. But he didn't know that. He's a lawyer. So he's just, you got that default to truth. You believe that if the police give you someone that they say is an expert, you're going to believe it in a way. So there were a number of instances where they brought up, issues that the NT use of force expert guide brought up. And I was like easily able to, pull them apart. And then they would do this thing where they'll call for a break, and they would obviously go out and YouTube it or Google it and come back in and move to the next question. And it was very obvious for the jury what was occurring. And I was also, I was at the point where I knew my stuff so well, and I could articulate myself so well, and I was calm, and I had a good mindset that at the end of the day, that all that was happening here, the mindset I went in was this: the prosecutor's going to ask me questions. Like, some nerd is going to ask me questions. Like, who cares? They're just questions. I've been through a lot worse than questions. But you can understand how stressful for some it is being in that box, being alone, with the potential outcome against you. Again, if we look back at what we were talking about, I think in the first episode, in the early life, boxing and stuff, I nearly prepared myself to be in a situation like that, insofar as you're on your own. You've got no one to back you up. You're in front of a crowd. There's potential bad outcomes. So I was probably more prepared than most to be in that situation. And in the lead up, obviously, to the trial, God, like running around in my head every time I'd go for a run every day for like an hour, I would just be thinking and visualizing, like you would for a sport event or any athletics. I'd be visualizing what questions the prosecutor was going to ask me. What could he ask me? How could he trip me up? What was he going to do? So that was going on in my head for the previous 2 years. So we get up there and we end up, making the prosecutor look like a bit of a fool, really, because he ends up, what they say, I think it's from a movie. Probably they don't actually say it in actual law school, but they say something like, if you have the evidence, bang on the evidence. If you don't have the evidence, bang on the defendant. If you can't bang on the defendant, bang on the table. And it got to the prosecutor just yelling and being emotional, banging on the table, and the jury could see that. And I stayed calm and just explained it, because he was trying to rile me up. And then we got through the cross-examination, and the re-examination by my lawyer wasn't long at all. We didn't have much to talk about. It was very short. It was only a few questions. And then that was me done. I think that ended on a Friday, perhaps. And me and the boys and the lawyers, my giving evidence ended on a Friday. But we still had our expert to give on the Monday. But after that, we knew before that the case was won. Because you can tell, even by the whole time you're in there, you're assessing the jury, you're seeing who responds to who. And the fact was that the police witnesses that were against me got torn apart, as they should have. The Sarge who gave evidence that the narrative was different than mine, she got torn apart. She had to be saved from committing perjury, basically, by the police prosecutor, by basically being it strung out of her that she didn't. What did they say? You didn't not tell the truth on purpose. To which she had to agree because it wasn't established that she didn't tell the truth. The use of force expert got torn apart. The arresting officer, as we talked about in the one of the previous episodes, we would say off evidence, if it ever got really truly investigated, it would look like, I would say for sure, it looked like an unlawful arrest. We didn't even need to cross-examine him on that because the way he walked up to the box, he was just a broken human. We could see it, the jury saw it. We didn't need to. The damage was done just by how he looked, how he acted, how he answered the questions from the prosecution. And then especially after I gave evidence that it was all wins from me, I explained the situation truthfully, honestly, professionally. We knew that the case was won. We just had to finish a few days now. So we went out on the beers, kind of celebrated that night. Came back the following week. Then the AFP retired use of force expert gave evidence. Obviously, that all went well. And then that was it. It was a wrap. Evidence is in. Judge has given his instructions to the jury. He finished giving his instructions at about midday on whatever day of the week it was. And I remember that he said, yep, all right, jury, off you go make your verdict. And the prosecutor put his hand up because this is how obvious the case was won. He put his hand up and he's like, Your Honor, will you be accepting a verdict before lunch or like in half an hour, or do we have time to go get a sandwich? And the judge was like, oh, mate, go get a sandwich. Well, we won't come back till after lunch. And anyway, as soon as we get back in that afternoon, the jury, because you have one kind of foreperson, I think they're called, they had already written a letter to the judge basically saying, hey, it's 11 verse 1 already. The woman who's not there yet, she's being emotional. She just won't stop crying. She won't talk about the evidence. She's just being emotional. And they were basically saying, hey, if she wasn't emotional, it's all in favour. Can we clear him now? And the judge was like, we're in no rush. Go home for the night, reread my instructions. We'll reconvene in the morning. Just we're in no rush. But we kind of knew that just from assessing the jury. You can tell what people are thinking, if they're engaging, if they're paying attention. And there was just one woman there the whole time that was, she kind of like refused to look me in the eye. She refused to look me in the eye from the start. You could tell she was emotional, but it didn't matter. When you took the emotions out of it, she went home that night, read the instructions again. We'd come back in the morning, and that for the verdict, we get the call saying the verdict's ready to be read out. Bit of a stressful time for everyone, especially I think my family and stuff. I was confident. I was confident the whole time to be honest, I was confident the whole time about what was going to, because the case, I knew as a police officer, I knew how rubbish the NT Police's case was against me. It was dog shit, and it was never any good, and it never had any hope of being any good. Even if they had that American expert, even if they're allowed to use that American expert, even if they're allowed to edit that report, all we'd done is we'd gone to the guy that he'd advised the police not to use. We'd gone to him, and he has a institute in America and Canada called the Force Science Institute, where they actually do peer-reviewed studies into police training and use of force. And we had a number of reports prepared by them in case we needed them to counter this other guy's view. So we'd had it sorted, but we just didn't need them. So we get in there for the verdict. I'm in the box, and it's just like how we all know it is, for count 1, count 2, count 3, all not guilty. And at that point, I was sitting in the box. All the journos are trying to jump over each other's shoulders to see any reaction from you to writing their little story. So I just didn't show any emotion. The prosecutor even gave me a little nod, but there was a lot of emotion. There was a lot of police officers in the crowd, and a lot of my mates, a lot of my family. Obviously, there was a lot of emotion there that got released, which was good for them, like for sure. Like it was really good. But I just didn't want to give the journos anything. It's like, as you know, like we get taught in a fight, like especially in boxing, Schulte, like you don't show your feelings. You know, you don't show when you're hurt, you don't show when you're happy, because you don't show nothing.
Yeah.
So yeah, not guilty on all accounts. And I think a lot of people would be like, at that point, you must be stoked. But immediately, all I wanted to do was go slap the shit out of those cops on the investigation team and the assistant commissioners and the use of force guy. Because, if the NT police were busy, right? Like, there's a lot of jobs to be done. After I finished giving it, no, as soon as he finished giving evidence, that use of force trainer, who you'd think has a real job to go back to, he came back in and just sat in the trial for the rest of the trial. So just getting paid just to sit there. Don't know what he was doing, but all I felt like doing was going slapping the shit out of them, because I was like, look, you waste, and they're like shaking their heads at each other, being like, oh, how don't we get it? But it was just a waste of everyone's time, a waste of money, a waste of time. And what people don't understand is that the police, by the way they acted at the start of the investigation, they led the community, and not just the community of Yuendamu, but the NT community and the other communities and people, groups around Australia. They led them to believe that I had done something wrong. There was a shooting that occurred on camera. We've arrested him for murder, and the commissioner, even through interviews he'd done with the media, implied guilt and implied that there would be a successful prosecution. So they'd imply this, and when you give someone, I guess, hope in a way, because they think something's been done wrong and they hope that they will get justice from it, which is never going to occur. The damage that occurs when those people have that kind of pulled under the rug pulled from them, that hurt the community, that hurt Yuendamu, that hurt the wider groups in Australia for sure. So they caused all this pain, and to my family, to our friends, to my people, to the NT police force, and to the wider community and the civilians, especially in the NT, all for nothing. And there was never any chance, if you were actually intelligent, looking at the file, there was never any chance that was going to be successful. So that's how I felt when the verdict came in, really. And then, we walked across the road and cracked a couple of beers.
Yeah.
Anyhow.
Mate,
if you don't mind,
yeah, go for it. Yep.
Mate, the one thing that I keep on coming back to me, and it really, really pisses me off, and Damo's explained this really well a couple of times. The evidence is what leads you to a conclusion. You do not doct evidence to get an outcome. That's perverting the course of justice. You must allow the evidence speaks for itself. You cannot make a case because you want this outcome. The outcome comes from the evidence that you gain. Mate, I am actually gobsmacked. Damo, what do you reckon?
Yeah, mate, I had early on heard from Scott Pollock at some point, and this is down the track, that it's very bad. Everything about it just doesn't make sense, and that's why he'd retracted so much. But the thing to me was, I couldn't believe that it just kept getting pushed. To me, it was like, we've got a matter here, and it's never going there. I think I'll go back to what I said on Zero Limits. I got asked about this by Matty Morris, and I went on to say that too. And I'd like your input on this, Zac, if you don't mind. To me, it was, there was never a prima facie case of guilt. It was never there. I think early on, and listen, some of the bosses who spoke there, I actually have dealt with them for years, and one or two of them were very respectable, were very good. But the initial media release that should have been done, the initial media conference that was done, should have gone something like this. The Northern Territory Police today, a young man in Yuendamu has been shot and killed as a result of an incident in relation to him being arrested by the Northern Territory Police. This is a tragedy. There are no winners in this. The matter will now be investigated very thoroughly by the coroner of the Northern Territory, and as a result, it's extremely inappropriate for me to say anything more about the actual incident and the investigation itself. What I can say is we are supporting the members involved. They have been put in a terrible situation where they've had to use a very high level use of force in order to defend their life. We'll be working with the UNDME community and the police community to make sure that everyone understands the process from now on. But as I said, it's very inappropriate for me to say anything about the operational matter and the investigation under hand. But I'm happy to take any questions. Done. It's fucking done. You've just poured water on it, and it's done. Oh, but what about this? That's an operational matter. I'm sorry, it's under investigation. You can't speak. The thing was behind the doors, the investigators are going, have we covered everything? Have we got this? Have we done that? No. Yes, we have. They've approached. Was the entrance lawful? Yeah. Look at this. He's got this here. And even then, all of that is irrelevant for the charge of murder. It doesn't matter that you had have unlawfully entered. Even if you had, I'm not saying you did because you didn't. But even if you had unlawfully entered that building and then held that, and when I say unlawfully entered, I mean not to the letter of the law of entry powers police. It's not like you burst in and tried to steal shit. You're in there, you've been acting professionally at the time, you've then been attacked by a person who's there trying to kill you. You're lawfully justified in defending yourself. So straight away, there is no murder. There is no that. There is no acting in good faith. You can have a small mistake. You didn't. You were covered. But I'm just saying, even if you weren't, you were still covered by, I'm still acting in good faith. I'm acting in good faith. Even if I've made a mistake, I'm still acting in good faith. I'm here to arrest this person. All of a sudden, I'm now stopping this person from killing me. I'm still acting in good faith. Now that person is trying to kill my partner. I'm still acting in good faith. Now that person is wounded. There's no longer a threat. I'm now acting in good faith to try and save this person's life. The whole thing was done in good faith. I can't comprehend an argument. I cannot possibly. I'm sorry. I'm ranting.
I remember when that media release came out, that very first media release that you're talking about now, and I remember just being like, fuck, that guy terrible. Sucked. That was horrible. Yeah. That was horrible. And we knew it at the time that it was horrible. And there's obviously this isn't I've been said a lot of stuff that's fact, and I'll not say that this is a fact. This is just what we heard. That there was initially plans to do the correct media release, as you've just explained, Barbs. But then the guy that was going to do that got pulled aside, and the boss that came in did his version of it. And we knew at the time that when he came out with that weak-as media release where he didn't explain anything, he didn't say anything, he left a void for the media. Oh. And then on top of that, and if you leave a void for the media, they're going to fill it. Yeah. And then on top of that, they didn't suppress my name from the media, which they should have, because if you don't suppress my name, you create this drama that the media get to jump on. There's this interesting book called Deadly Force Encounters, and it's written by a guy, I think there's Christensen and Artwell. They work a lot with Dave Grossman over in America, and they basically have researched decades and decades of police shootings and how the organizations then deal with it. And basically, if you look at the blueprint that they've created for how to deal with it, i.e. don't create a void, get out there and say what happened, be transparent, and say exactly what had occurred. Exactly. Yeah. Just be transparent about what had occurred, but be strong about it. And they even say, like, suppress officers' names if the opportunity arises, because you don't want that drama. You want a professional investigation. But if you look at the blueprint of what you're supposed to do, the NT police basically just did opposites. It was like they were trying to make the shittest decisions that they could. And then you'd think along the way that they would figure it out and go, let's make a smart one. But at every decision point, they're like, let's make the dumbest decision, the most damaging decision for the organization, for the community. And they've kept on doing it since the shooting.
Yeah.
Sorry, mate. I'll come back to you, Shilty. I've got to do this before my poor old tired brain stops working. But the big thing there was you've got to educate the public about why somebody gets shot by the police. It's not like those big, bad, horrible policemen turned up and just murdered somebody. It's like, no. We have lots and lots of evidence saying that this person has committed lots of offences, and they need to be apprehended for the safety of the community. Those people are potentially dangerous. I think police are one of the very few um, organisations now in the world that don't do extremely thorough safety analysis, and if of their work, and if the matter comes out, no, there is a risk to, because it's impossible. If there's a risk to the members, we're not going to do it. You could not have a police force that accepted that.
Mm.
I've spoken before, firefighting. Yeah, it's too dangerous. We're not doing it. So the fire just burns on. I'm sorry, we need to move to a different level because we're putting human life at risk. Well, police don't have that luxury. Police will act. We have active shooters. If active shooters are killing people, police are trained to run in and carry out immediate action, rapid deployment. Put yourself in lethal threat and end that to protect the community. The only other organisation that I know that actively puts themselves in the absolute face of lethal force is the ADF.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Schultzy, mate. I just had to say it before it fell out of my head.
Mate, that's all right. The fact is, I'm just sitting there like I'm still godsmacked. The fact is, the NT police spend millions and millions of dollars training us to basically be impartial, follow the evidence, and they have completely thrown all that money out the window to then basically try and treat you like a criminal to get the case.
Yeah.
They had so they started the investigation. They've figured out the outcome they want.
Mm.
And then they've got the evidence. The only evidence they've put in there is to get that outcome. You
Yeah,
can't do
Exactly.
it.
No.
Yeah, you can't. And as you said before, Schulte, about the pervert the course of justice, I guarantee you, if this situation had been investigated properly, if the investigation now was investigated properly, I guarantee you
Yep.
someone would be getting charged with perverting the course of justice.
Yep.
But for me, for me to, because it gets to the point, like, do I then make a complaint or do I go down the court process of malicious prosecution? What's like, I got to start looking at like what's healthy for me, because lawyers and courts is not healthy for anyone except for the
No.
lawyers. They're getting paid. The lawyers and the judges are getting paid. So I actually went down that path for a little bit. Do I go down the malicious prosecution path? Because it's, I agree. And to a point, it should get like, there's an argument I should do that to get like, because there shouldn't be cops in the organization that are doing what's being done. But it's just was so unhealthy for me and my family, especially myself, to deal with lawyers and to be in any courtrooms again. So I made the decision not to. And when Barbs, you had a good point. I made some notes while you're talking because everyone was making good points about why this all started and how it kept going. I think I've mentioned it before. I think it could have started with this like noble cause corruption idea that we're going to, in a way, we've got the right intentions. We're going to do the wrong thing for the right intentions. The right intentions weren't to arrest me. The right intentions would have been to appease everyone. We'll put the file before the court so we can appease one party. He'll get cleared. The other party's appeased. Everyone's happy at the end. But then they realize that, oh, that's illegal to arrest people without just cause. So that's how I think it really started. And then it just started snowballing and everyone realized we got to cover it up. We got to cover it up and we got to cover our asses. The way we cover our asses is to put enough pressure on me that I either kill myself, snap, get locked up and make it go away. Because the lengths that they went to, the police involved, was insane. And I also think like the way in which they did it could have been because of that, like, and I think we've talked about it before, and someone else, this is not my words, someone else's words, the soft bigotry of low expectations, the idea that the Indigenous community in the NT couldn't deal with the truth. It couldn't deal with the idea that, hey, you shouldn't stab cops. If you do stab cops, you might get shot. Like, everyone's human up there, regardless of race. Everyone's like smart enough and strong enough to understand that truth. And the TRG officer that went out the Sunday morning, so the shooting's on Saturday night, he went out to community the Sunday morning. There's body-worn footage of it. He actually tells the community, hey, there's been a shooting. Walker stabbed the police officer. That's why the police officer stabbed him. Shot him. He basically says it's a justified shoot, and you can see the community take it fine. They take it
Yeah.
as expected. They say,
Yeah.
they're like, oh, so if you treat the community like adults, it's got to be fine. But the NT police, I believe, are part of that government system in the NT where there is this, and across Australia, there's this lower expectation for Indigenous, and they're like, oh, we've got to be gentle. Like, we've got to be very careful here. And
Despicably
then,
infantilizing. It's the
Yep.
infantilization of adult human beings.
exactly.
Yeah.
And the thing is, we can get called racist for using adjectives. It's like, but I use that adjective in the car with an Aboriginal man sitting next to me who I would fucking die for, and he'd die for me.
Yeah.
So we're having a laugh, we're mates, and we're taking the piss. And, that's the thing that people think, you're white cops, you're inherently racist. It's like, you could not do that job in the Northern Territory for 30 seconds and be racist because you're dealing with Aboriginal people all the time. As colleagues, as bosses, as just people. They're people.
Yeah.
It's just humans. Like,
look, there's definitely, I 100% agree with you, and there's definitely like cultural issues, and you're right to have an issue with someone's culture.
Yes,
and that's you're allowed to have an issue with culture, because I'm open with. I got issues with the West's culture, in some regards. But there's a really good example up in the NT which just occurred in the last week. 28-year-old male, Indigenous, has been convicted of rape and assault of a 13-year-old girl.
Yep.
His sentence is disgusting. It's like a year, something like that. So 28-year-old male, 13-year-old female. His argument was, culturally, he was given this girl as a bride, and he thought she was older. But the girl's family gave her to him. So there's still, and we know this. We were up there. We know that promised brides are still being given.
Of course they are.
Within Australia. But there's like what we were talking about before, there's like this refusal from interstate folk or people in power to shine a light on it and actually speak truthfully and be like, hey, well, this is wrong. Let's be honest about it. Let's shine a light on it. Whatever it is, it's not about race, it's about culture. Let's grow from that. Yeah. So it definitely causes a split. It's like othering that occurs, but the NT police are a massive part of it. The bosses, they do it as well. So there's so many issues up there, but you can't fix them unless you address them.
No.
Yeah.
But
the reason we're passionate about this is because, mate, you've said it to us. Zach, you've said it to us too. The other day you were wearing an NT police hat while you were doing this stuff. We loved the cops. We loved our job. We were doing the right thing. We were the ones on the ground who were going, forget what everyone's opinion is, remove emotion. We're doing the correct thing here. Yeah. Sorry, I cut you off again. That's about 3 times now.
No, look, now I've actually lost my train of thought.
Oh.
No, that's all right. Keep on talking. It'll come back.
I took us down a path there. So I guess we go back to after the trial. We've just had the not guilty verdict. We've gone across the road. Me and the boys are, me and the boys and the family, everyone's in high spirits. We get a message passed along to us a couple of hours later because immediately after the trial, the Commissioner of Police at the time, I don't know if you guys remember, did a media press conference, and it went for about 6 minutes, and it's still on YouTube, and it is a very, very strange 6 minutes. So we watched this press conference, and it's like basically like kind of defeated and be like, sorry, we'll get him. Don't worry about it. We didn't get him now, but we will get him. Like, he didn't mention my name or nothing like that, but it's just a really strange press conference. So something's gone on. And he basically says, like, the real truth will come out at the coronial. Then I get a message saying that I've been suspended again, but I don't get a reason why, which was strange. So immediately after that, obviously the police force don't talk to me. They don't provide any, mediation, right? They just suspend me. So we go from the weird situations gets weirder. I've just been cleared. and now I'm suspended, but we don't know why I'm suspended. They haven't told us why I'm suspended, and then I'm back to Canberra. And then it takes months for me to figure out why I was suspended. And still, no one from the NT Police executive spoke to me. No one has spoken to me. The only one that's spoken to me was by running into me at the coronial accidentally. And he just said, "Oh, hi, bye." So no one had actually spoken to me. I get informed that the reason I was suspended was for disciplinary matters. And because like it came out in the coronial like down the track that I've got all these disciplinary matters, I hadn't, because I can actually see them. They'd all been cleared, reopened, cleared kind of thing. So it gets to the point where a few months after, I actually call Professional Standards Command. I'm like, yo, like, tell me why I'm on suspension. And they were just like, it's got nothing to do with us. We didn't suspend you. It's like you have to speak to this guy. So I ended up speaking to the head of Alice Springs Station at that time, I think. And he was like, oh, that he did some investigating. And it turns out the reason that they were utilizing for me to be suspended was because I had an excess of leave in my book. And then they're like, you got to stay on leave, you can't cash in. And I just wanted to get back to work because after the trial, you know, I think I've spoken about it before. After the shooting, what should happen, if it's a justified shoot, which it was, what the right thing to happen is that you then go back into the arms of the boys and girls that you work with. And you all support each other, you all come around each other. The organization comes around you and like looks after each other. That should have occurred. That didn't occur. After the trial, I got found not guilty. That should have occurred. That didn't get occurred because, again, I'm isolated again. I'm sent away again. So I'm kind of like trying to come back to work. All I want to do is get back to the job. Like that's all I wanted to do. All I wanted to do was be a cop and help people that actually need help. And then I find out that it's about leave. And I'm like, oh, I'll just cash it in. Like, you can't cash it in. But we work for the government. So it's just government systems. So I ended up cashing in all my leave. And then they have to bring me back to work. So I come up to work, get moved back up to Darwin. But since that day, I've never stepped foot in a cop shop in the NT because like before I even came back, I was banned from attending a police station, banned from wearing a police uniform, banned from getting in a cop car. I was put into this little government building with no return to work program, basically. So that was basically the start of the end of me being like kind of like forced out of the organization. Again, I was cleared internally of everything. I was not found guilty of anything internally. No discipline was given. I was given remedial guidance for like everything because PSC gives remedial guidance for everything just to tick the box. I was given remedial guidance for the shooting even. But when just prior to the coronial starting, which we'll probably handle like the next big episode, like just prior to that, when I found because again, I'd seen the whole corruption of the investigation. I'd seen all this mishandled evidence and stuff like that. When I got the police final version of the coronial report, because you get to see it before it gets put forward, and I saw that they just used all this corrupted evidence, that's when I lost it. And I was like, see you never. I couldn't go to work. Like, it was damaging enough for me after all this to sit in an office for 8 hours a day with no purpose and just be like slowly just like try to like disappear him kind of thing. Again, I just had to look after myself and my health. And I wrote a letter to the media about what I thought about the commission at the time and the corruption in the investigation and the coronial, about where I thought it was going to go, which turns out to be exactly where it went. And I got fired for it. So, yeah, man, that was the trial.
So that's the trial.
And see, mate, I'll just go back. So when you're talking about talking to the community and treating them like adults, I used to do that. I remember, so I went to an intervention station, and basically back then, a lot of the intervention police were kind of, touchy-feely and all that sort of thing. I wasn't malicious. I just went out there, and I remember the first time I arrested someone, I put them in the cage, and they kind of arced up and said, "Oh, no, nobody goes in the cage." And I said, "Well, they do with me. That's the way it runs." I then sat down for half an hour and explained the process to them like adults.
Yeah.
Sat there and talked. I went through the process, how they're going to be treated. In the end, they said, "Yep, thank you, Ben." Nobody came down to storm the police force. Nobody came down to argue anything. from then on, in that community, if I arrested someone and put him in the cage, everybody go, "That's all right, Ben's got him. He's already explained what happens. We're happy." Because I treated them like fucking adults.
Yes.
It's not hard.
100%. 100%. We, as part of IRT, we got flown into communities only for a few days here and there to deal with the situation, to deal with a violent offender that we couldn't get. And no joke, obviously the police didn't use this evidence, but I would do the same thing. Obviously, I wasn't in the community for long, so I'd go introduce myself to the community, especially the key players. Tell them, I'll be honest, I'm here to get this dude. You can either help me or you can't, but I'm gonna if you don't help me, I'm gonna be annoying because I'm just gonna keep showing up, knocking on doors, and I need less sleep than you, so we'll be around.
Yeah.
And we would end up often, most of the time, the community would end up assisting us, being friendly, and even if we had a tussle with the offender, I remember up in Borroloola, the offender's dad would like to his kid when he arrested him, like, "Brother, do not worry, you're with Constable Zac, my best friend. He's going to look after you." Everything, and I'm like, yeah, he's gone to jail for a little bit, but everything's going to be fine.
He's
but
cool.
yeah, if you just treat people like humans instead of children, everything will get better.
Mate, condescension and infantilization is actually dangerous for police officers.
Exactly.
So we used to have this all the time, and I've mentioned one earlier where one example in Larapinta Valley Camp in Alice Springs, probably just before you got there, a girl had the butt of her hair taken off by a
Brother, I was there for that. I was there.
You were there for that. So you know that.
I wasn't there that shift, but I was there the next day. I heard all about it.
Yeah. So you were there. So it was 2016 probably. So I remember we got that file. Well, not we, but it went upstairs to crime because it was such a serious matter. And I remember watching that body-worn camera and going, the indecision here was fucking near deadly. This was dangerous. Had they turned up and gone, bang, crack, you're in the cage. Hey, guys, everyone's sweet, no trouble. She's going for that. We're all done here. Keep it down. Make sure there's no alcohol around. We'll see you later. Drive out. They loved decisive action and very fair. They just go, no, that's right, that's good. That's you might be good. You do a good job, you fellas. Yep, no trouble. Hey, you look after yourself, auntie. We'll see you tomorrow. Got it, bang. They loved decision making. They loved decisive movement.
Yep.
Yeah, who everyone does, but I'll go down a fucking path if we go down this one hard. But I think the damage that the infantilization causes to the women and children in these communities makes me furious.
Me too.
For example, if we go back to that 13-year-old girl, what is that saying? Something like sympathy to the guilty is cruelty to the innocent, or something like that. And there's so much sympathy and weakness shown to the guilty offenders up there, and then by all these do-gooders and these bosses and these fucking do-gooders, that they do not understand the cruelty that they're imposing on the victims.
Yes.
Because we just keep releasing offenders, giving them small sentences. The offenders know what they're fucking doing.
Oh, they just smile.
The women and children are suffering. And you've got these do-gooders, you've got these bosses who bend over for the do-gooders, showing weakness and showing all the sympathy to the offenders and none of it to the victims. It's weird because a lot of them are smart people, but it's like they can't comprehend the damage they're doing.
Yeah.
But that's the NT as well. The head of one of the board directors of Naja or something is a lad that pled guilty to bashing his pregnant missus, and for that he got for stomping on her belly when she was pregnant, and he got a fine for it.
I'll just preface. We'll probably cut it away shortly, but I'll preface the whole thing with all of this breaks my heart because I loved it, mate. I loved it. That was my family. The Northern Territory Police. I hand on heart say I never saw any level of corruption apart from stupid little silly mistakes that aren't corruption. I'm not talking high level fucking line your pantry with stuff and make sure people get away with committing high level offences. I saw people make mistakes, and ironically, mistakes that we would never charge anyone with if we found them making. It's like, I can't, mate, that was a bit silly. Literally like that. That I felt real belonging when I first joined the NT Police. And what really upsets me is that the overwhelming majority of the people involved in that organisation are outstanding humans, including some at very high rank.
Mm.
are
Yeah.
outstanding humans. It's
Yeah.
just a smattering of those who aren't. And then it's
Exactly.
also a smattering of those who are too coward to speak out.
Yeah.
I think it's important to say look, there's a couple of bad eggs. The majority of people in the police are very, very good people.
I, it,
There's
it was an overwhelmingly, I would say the overwhelming majority were just excellent humans doing a bloody hard job and
100%.
doing it bloody well.
yeah, yeah.
100%.
Aye.
So,
But anyway,
like
And that's
the only
why.
sorry, the only thing I'll say, like, I did see, I saw a couple of things where people should have been prosecuted and they weren't, and
Mm.
that like I was pretty deep in the investigation and basically got taken out of my hands. And look, that was their decision. I'm sure, mate. Look, I'm happy if they want to try and justify it, but it never came
Mm.
out. So it's just one of these things where I sat there and gone, well, I don't agree with that. But the fact is, it got taken out of my hands and it all got finished off. And I was pretty pissed off about it.
Yeah, and that's why I started actually like speaking out. That's why I did Maddie's podcast and talking to you boys is because, Bob, what you were talking about before with the mistakes that people were making.
mm,
Just before I started speaking out, one of the crew, one of my mates, made a little mistake. Nothing ends up getting charged for it, and the stress they're
Yeah,
getting put under. And I was like, well, I know what else is going on, but it's like you're out. She's not in the circle, so they're going to charge her for that. You're going to put her before courts for that. And I saw that happening, and I was like, this is not on because the people involved are still there, and they're still
yeah,
kind of running the show because there are so many. There's so many amazing people, but they do get beat down by the pressure that's put on them. And then there
yeah,
are a lot of sheep that you
mm,
can't really tell if they're good or bad because if they've got a good boss, they'll follow and they'll be good. They'll like
mm,
look like they're amazing. But as
yeah,
soon as that bad boss comes on top, they'll all start following. So that's why I decided because I was like, the good people are getting stitched up. The shit people who should get stitched up aren't. They're getting looked after. And maybe it's
mm,
because they know where the skeletons are. So they're holding cards over other people, but it doesn't matter. So
mm.
that's why I decided to talk and hope that the rot within the police force that's still there can
Yeah,
start fucking off, either by their own decision or it gets forced. But either way,
because
yeah,
I mean, I love the police force. I
mm,
just that was a mate one art. He said, oh, what's the best job you could ever do? And I said, I've done it.
yeah,
I said, being a
yeah,
police officer,
100%.
the most honourable things I've ever done in my life, and I respected the badge, I respected the department, and like I said, but the problem is, like, I had this thing: if you're going to stick your head out of the trenches, it's going to get shot at,
yeah,
Mm,
and I wasn't afraid to voice my opinion because I believed in a police force that was honest,
yeah.
and that's all I followed in my whole career.
mm,
And I think the beauty of us three is that we are not sitting around going, the job's fucked.
No,
mm,
Losers going, oh, couldn't, job's fucked,
mm,
fuck, job's fucked. No, we loved it. We loved it. We were
yeah,
good coppers, mate. All three of us, I think, were good
mm,
cops. Um, I think we're coming from a point of we're just once again standing up and doing the the right thing. We're standing
yeah,
up and doing the unpopular, correct action.
mm,
And that's
yeah,
all I look at it as. We're not sitting here whinging and slandering. We're sitting here going, there are problems in our beloved force. It's pure
mm,
honesty. Um,
well,
you know,
this court case just outlined,
yeah,
yeah.
and yeah, and look, I'm
Uh,
not going to sit back. Damo and I came out. What was our mission statement, Damon? To look after
the
the
normalisation of the police force. That's our
yes,
mm,
intent. We talk about commander's intent. That's it.
yep,
Normalisation of the
yeah.
police force.
Yeah, and we do some crazy stuff. And I agree. I think a lot of like police force. I love it. Again, if I was anonymous right now, I would be a cop. If I could,
Yeah,
I'd be a cop. There's
mm,
nothing I would rather do than be out there putting myself in between danger and someone that needed help.
yeah,
That's what I want to do. And I was good. I think us three police in the same way. And
mm,
that's not to say that there are police out there that police differently. Because I would never say that like my version of how I policed is for everyone, and that's how it should be done. But that's just how there's just different ways to do it.
mm.
And because I don't want it to come across like if you don't police like me, you ain't a good cop.
No, but
But
that's what makes the
we
police
just
force good. Everyone
Exactly.
has
As long as you're
it's human.
as long as your intentions are right, you're
Mm,
good and you're strong. Do it how you do it.
yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, love the yeah. We're the same. We love the cops and hope that the cops can get back to being better because the cops that are suffering. I think we said it every episode. When the cops are getting so much pressure that they can't do their job, that they're
Mm,
scared of um, the
Repercussions.
consequences from the repercussions from the bosses. The
yep.
people that suffer are the victims of crime.
Yes. Correct.
Yeah.
The
That's who
community
suffers.
suffers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
It's a little old lady who gets a home invasion that suffers.
Yeah, because the cops are like, well, I ain't going to attend because if I arrest someone, we'll get done for excessive use
Yeah.
of force.
They've got machetes. So I can't pull a gun on them. It's not happening. Oh,
Yeah,
shit, what do we do? No, no.
exactly.
Mm.
Exactly.
No. I think we should wrap it, boys. We've got plenty more to
Let's
talk
wrap
about.
it.
So
Yeah,
that's the
mate.
Supreme Court matter.
Hmm.
It's not ending anytime soon. But mate, Zach, again, thank you very much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Hey,
And there you
thank
go.
you guys. I was just
No,
going to say thank you as well.
no trouble. Well, that's it, boy. Ladies and gents, we'll wrap it up for, what are we up? Episode 4, Zac Rolfe series. We've got
Part 4, mate.
part 4. Part 4, yeah. So we're
I
back
think it's
again next
episode
week.
91.
Yeah. We're back again next week, and it's going to be moving into the coronial side of things, and this is where it gets real bloody interesting. So if you're interested in it, bear with us because we're not finished yet.
No, not by a long shot. And yep, again to all the listeners, before we finish off, the 18th of October at the Gold Coast Tavern at 12 midday. Come and meet us there. We're doing a live show. Yeah, so go onto our Facebook page, Two Ordinary Cops. We'll be putting it on Damo and my our personal page as well. So just log on and actually put yourself as attending, so we know about the numbers coming on. So far, there's a number of cartons on the bar, so you might get the opportunity of a couple of free drinks. So hopefully that's the case. But Damo, what do you reckon, mate? We'll finish it off.
Well, I reckon if you turn up trying to freeload and get grog, that's a carton, so you'll end up chucking money in.
I'd agree, Zach. What do you reckon?
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
We're on the same boat there. All right, so that's it. We're wrapped up again, and we'll talk to you again next week with the coronial.
All right. See you then.